Hi, everyone. Garnett Genuis with the weekly update. I have proved to be a little bit of a controversy magnet this week, and I look forward to sharing some updates with you on a few of the issues that have been in the news, as well as other things that have been happening in Parliament. First of all, a personal update. We got a dog this week. We have a dog. It's great. It's a milestone for me to have a dog. So I'll share cute photos of kids with the dog later on. Top issue this week in discussion in Parliament is the Liberal attack on freedom of speech. So many of you probably know about Bill C-10, the Liberal bill to facilitate online censorship. And we have done everything we can as Conservatives to fight back against that. Now, Liberals have used this extraordinary measure of Parliament limiting debate in committee. So normally you have debate happen in Parliament, it goes to a committee has to study all the issues, consider all these amendments, and then it comes back to Parliament for a final vote. What the Liberals are doing is that they're sick of the discussion at committee. They decided to cut that off. So now we've passed this timeline of limited time set in committee for discussion of this bill. So now amendments are being voted on at committee that aren't even being read. So MPs are like the amendments that we're voting on aren't being read. They're not debated. The chair is just saying amendment number whatever, and then it's being voted on. So it's utterly crazy. It's crazy in that the government is shutting down debate in Parliament and in committee on a bill that exists to shut down debate on the internet. So we have censorship in Parliament on a bill that will allow censorship on the internet, and we have votes happening in Parliament on amendments that haven't even been read. So if you're following what's happening at the Heritage Committee and you're listening, what are MPs voting on? You don't know. The amendments aren't being read out, and there's no opportunity to offer sub amendments to fix them or clarify. This is just this is not what should be happening in a democratic society. And I hope people wake up to the degree to which Liberals are really debasing our democratic institutions. This is a very expansive reform of the Broadcasting Act in Canada, and it is being pushed through with amendments that are being considered without being read, without being debated, and without any kind of opportunity to change them or alter them in any way. And in the midst of this, the minister responsible, Steve Guilbeault, the Heritage Minister, hasn't been able to answer very basic questions. And the fact is, this bill allows for regulation of social media algorithms. And the minister won't admit that. He won't answer direct questions about whether he's intending to do that. And I've asked him directly in the House of Commons, what is your plan in terms of this bill facilitating the regulation of social media algorithms? And what that means concretely, social media algorithms, is that nobody's going to stop you from making a post. But these social media algorithms is the degree to which people actually see those posts. So how many of your friends or people beyond your friend group actually see the posts you make on social media? That is determined by social media algorithms. And this legislation is going to allow the government to go in and regulate social media algorithms. So that's Bill C-10. We are fighting it every step of the way, including at committee. And when this video ends, I'm going to go back to the Heritage Committee to be supporting my colleagues there. Bill C-6, the government's conversion therapy bill. I want to say it's important that this is a freedom of speech issue as well. And it raises important freedom of speech questions. So the government says that this is about banning conversion therapy, which is a violent, coercive practice aimed at changing people's sexual orientations. But Bill C-6 misdefines conversion therapy. So it uses an incorrect definition. It is so broad in the definition used in Bill C-6 that private conversations between individuals in which people's opinions about sexuality could be considered conversion therapy and lead them to be criminally prosecuted. What parents say to their kids about house rules, about sexuality, about relationships, that could lead to them being prosecuted for things they say to their kids. Now, I might disagree with things that parents say or people say in private conversations, but I don't think we should have a bill before Parliament that misdefines the issue of conversion therapy so as to say people can't have private conversations about certain aspects of this issue if they cross certain lines. So Conservatives are committed to standing up for freedom of speech. We're fighting on Bill C-10. And we have concerns about the current definition used in Bill C-6, which we're trying to amend. So freedom of speech, big issue right now in Canada's Parliament. Liberals are shutting down debate on a bill that would restrict freedom of speech. Second issue I want to bring to your attention, and this is a really important human rights issue, folks. We have Canadian citizens who are very young children who are detained in prison camps in northern Syria. Now, how did this happen? These are children that when Daesh or ISIS was in decline, they, along with members of their family, were captured and they were sent to these camps that are controlled by Kurdish forces. Now, in many cases, these children may have parents who were actually involved with ISIS. Maybe one of their parents, maybe both of their parents. And this is, obviously anybody who's involved in the horrific crimes involved in terrorism should be punished and held accountable. But these children, many of whom have Canadian citizens, are obviously not accountable or responsible for the crimes that were committed by their parents. And yet they are in horrific conditions in these camps in northern Syria. So what Conservatives have said distinctly, we've said that we must have clear, strong consequences. We will not support the liberal approach to former ISIS fighters that puts our security at risk. We must have a strong, clear response in terms of national security. And we also have to make a distinction between people who are guilty, the fighters, and people who are innocent, these very young children who are in deplorable conditions in these camps. So Canada has to step up. And this week, in a supplementary opinion on a parliamentary committee report, Conservatives, New Democrats, and Bloc members actually got together. We signed a joint supplementary report. And that supplementary report said, we have to do something about these children. The Liberal government has let this issue fester for years and years. They're claiming they can't access these children, which is clearly not true. Other countries have done it, and Canada's actually done it previously. They say they can't access these camps. So, I just encourage people, think about these human rights issues. I mean, these are Canadian children. Imagine if it was your children, your grandchildren, and they're in these deplorable prison camps. We don't believe that children should be punished for the crimes of members of their family. So we're continuing to call on this, and Conservatives have been trying to work constructively with other parties to create some pressure on this important human rights issue. Okay, I want to talk about Catholic Indigenous relations. This has been, excuse me, a little bit of a controversy this week because Charlie Angus, an NDP MP, put forward a unanimous consent motion. A bit of background. A unanimous consent motion is not a regular motion that's debated in the House of Commons. It's where an MP stands up at a random time and says, I want unanimous consent to pass a motion of some kind. And I am not a fan of this process in general. I'll just say at the outset, because I think generally when Parliament passes a motion, there should be debate on it, consideration of it. People should be able to review it in advance. But there's not necessarily significant advance notice, opportunity to consult with constituents and so forth when there's an advance consent motion. So that's one issue, is the process. But we'll leave that aside and talk a bit about the substance of this. So this was a motion that was Parliament publicly trying to push the Pope and the Catholic Church to take a number of steps with regard to reconciliation with Indigenous Canadians. And I took the position at the time in opposing the unanimous consent motion. And it's a position I took a number of years ago as well, that while I personally would like to see many of these steps taken by the Catholic Church, and I say that as a Catholic, I feel this desire to see the progress happen in terms of reconciliation. I believe that reconciliation needs to happen through direct, ongoing dialogue between Indigenous leaders and the Catholic Church. And Parliament or politicians trying to grandstand and stick themselves into that conversation isn't helpful. So that was the position that I took on Tuesday, and it was a bit controversial. But today, it just has come out in the news that it was announced that, in fact, Catholic and Indigenous leaders have been working for years to facilitate a meeting between a delegation of Indigenous leaders, including residential school survivors, and the Pope. So actually, behind the scenes, out of the public eye, there's been dialogue that has been happening for years towards this meeting happening. Now, the implication in the article is that meeting already would have happened if it wasn't for COVID. Obviously, we've been in this environment for a while where travel has been limited. But there are plans later this year. There was certainly a hope that there will be this opportunity for direct dialogue between Indigenous leaders as well as survivors, and the Pope and others leading in the Catholic Church. So I was just very encouraged to see this news, and I think it does demonstrate the value of politicians, yes, cheering from the sidelines for that reconciliation process, but of understanding that there has to be a distinction between what the churches are doing and what the government is doing, and that government has its own responsibilities in terms of pursuing reconciliation with Indigenous Canadians. The churches that are involved, including the Catholic Church, have their responsibilities, and they need to each separately undertake those responsibilities in dialogue with Indigenous leaders, and of course with survivors. So I was just encouraged to see today's news, to see that in fact that's been happening. And while there's politicians that constantly want to be the story, I think this is a case where we need to hope for, wish for, and encourage however we can the dialogue that is clearly happening. But what our federal politicians need to do is focus on their own responsibilities when it comes to reconciliation. And this is what has frustrated me about some of the efforts this week, I think, to push the attention onto other actors rather than parliamentarians and government taking responsibility for what they need to do. And I just really hope that as the news cycle changes, that we don't forget the need for real political action to advance reconciliation and improve the lives of Indigenous Canadians. I think sometimes we need to be wise to these political tactics where the Prime Minister or other politicians who have really failed to advance reconciliation in terms of a government Indigenous people relations try to point the finger at somebody else and say, well, how about their responsibilities in terms of reconciliation? I'm hopeful that action will be taken in that dialogue between the Catholic Church and Indigenous people, and we need the government to step up as well. So there's a few thoughts on that, and you can find some more posts on that certainly later on down my page. So the final thing I want to talk about, I gave a speech just a few minutes ago in the House of Commons on a private member's bill from the Bloc. You probably didn't hear much about this on the news. It probably won't pass. But it's a bill to pay the Governor General $1 a year. And this kind of follows this significant scandal involving the Governor General appointed by Justin Trudeau, Julie Payette, who wasn't really properly vetted. And there was a vetting process for Governors General that was put in place by Stephen Harper. The Liberals, just following those comments. Thank you, Rocco. Appreciate it. You totally lost my train of thought here. All right. So barbershops will be accessible soon, I think, right? I haven't followed all the details of reopening, but that'll be top of the list. The Bloc bill would pay the Governor General $1 a year. This follows Justin Trudeau saying to the appointing a Governor General without a proper vetting process, ignoring the vetting process that was put in place by Stephen Harper, and then the Governor General resigns in the midst of this scandal, but still has access to all these benefits that former Governors General have available to them. So the Bloc wants to pay Governors General $1 a year. Conservatives have been very vocal about just the problem of this scandal associated with the Governor General, and really the failure of the Prime Minister to use the appropriate vetting process. But we don't think it makes sense to pay the Governor General $1 a year either. We can have a long discussion about how much public officials should be paid, but if you don't pay salaries to public officials, then those positions are not going to be accessible to the vast majority of people, including people who have merit. So I am not in favor of paying the Governor General $1 a day, but maybe if the Bloc members think this is a good idea, they could propose a bill to have members of their caucus paid $1 a day, and we can. Pardon me, it's not $1 a day; it's $1 a year. Wow, $1 a day would be much more. All right, well, thanks for following this discussion, and just to return back briefly to the first item. A lot of people are talking about freedom of speech right now. The attacks on freedom of speech through the Liberals' private member, probably through the Liberal bill C10. And when I get off this live, I'm going to be going back on Joining the Heritage Committee and just continuing the fight from a conservative perspective to defend freedom of speech and oppose the gross abuses in Bill C-10. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back with another live like this in 7 days, and keep following my page for more content on all the big issues of the day. Have a great weekend.
Share the link.
Yeah.